So let me at my turn also say hello to everyone, people who did the effort to come here today and those who join us virtually. My name is Frank Smit and I work for Ecological and Social Transitions Unit in DGRTD. I'm actually not the project officer of this project. Anka is a project officer, but as Andrea already said, I've been involved in the origin of the project, and that's why I was asked to say a few words about this. Anka will then take over and put the project in the context of Horizon Europe. I will just share with you a few ideas, a few concepts which were at the basis, which inspired me and other colleagues to come to this topic description, the work program, which led ultimately to Rebalance as the project addressing this. And I would like to start with a definition of transportation as it is formulated in the Encyclopedia Britannica, which states that the movement of goods and persons from place to place and the various means by which such movement is accomplished. That's clear. Then the second phrase is more interesting: the growth of the ability and the need to transport large quantities of goods or number of people over long distances at high speeds in comfort and safety has been an index of civilization and in particular of technological progress. So next slide, please. Because there we come with it touches already upon the concept, mobility, culture of modernity. This definition indeed illustrates how we think about transport and mobility, because when thinking about mobility, we continue mainly seeing mobility as addressed in terms of technology. However, there is another often neglected aspect of mobility, which is the value it has in our European culture. And the idea at the Commission was to examine how this value is embedded in our culture, or in other words, what our mobility culture looks like. And one example, for instance, to make this more concrete is anthropological invariance in travel behavior, such as the constant travel time budget, which states that a stable daily amount of time people make available for travel. So these are issues that often are not considered when we talk about transport in a technological way, but which are essential to understand how we should reform our transport system. New ideas about mobility, and that is of the future, that's what Rebalance is about, will be more powerful if they take better account of the dominant mobility culture in which they will have to fight for their place. And moreover, these new ideas, they will also have to indicate which new mobility culture they implicitly presuppose. And there you see already a few of the challenges Rebalance had to try to formulate an answer. Looking back at mobility culture now, we see that mobility is a basic principle of modernity. Only in modern societies you can find a positive connotation of mobility and a societal change, social change. This relationship was forged during the Enlightenment period with the concept, for instance, of Mobilität als Bildung. And you see also the picture there of Goethe on his travel to Italy, which illustrates this concept, dynamism, being on the move, and fluidity. In modernity, for the first time, they're not just tools to achieve other results, to go from place A to B, as it used to be before, but they become goals per se. And this ends up in seeing efficiency, speed, and acceleration becoming dominant features of mobility. And as such, they legitimate the dominant transport system and paradigm we still embrace today. Think here, for instance, on the Italian futurist who called of the beauty of speed. Are these parameters now still able to cope with the challenges of 21st century? And what about climate change in this whole story? Next slide, please. So mobility, from being a culture of modernity, becomes as such also a challenge, because the relationship between modernity and mobility is double-edged. Expanding opportunities are accompanied by growing constraints. Indeed, most evolutions, also innovations in mobility, they contribute to smoother, faster, more efficient mobility. But at the other hand, they contribute to pollution, to casualties in traffic, to climate change. And despite our will to address these challenges and these issues, the problems only seem to increase. So here we have an important cultural shift. Mobility is increasingly seen in this concept as a burden. The dark side of mobility appears and is under greater attention of the audience. Now, can we move on with a mobility system based on the old values, or do we need to change, first redefine the mobility system before we move to the next phase? Here, of course, you spontaneously may think of Albert Einstein saying that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that caused them. And disruptive innovation, radical changes in the transport sector are expected to take momentum now in the near future. We see that around us everywhere. Already now, indeed, we are witnessing first signs of these transformations, including new social attitudes by users of mobility. And we are experiencing also shifts in the cultural significance of mobility and movements. In fact, at the same time as this concept becomes widespread, then mobility begins to change and its meaning and its value. And that means that going as fast as possible, as far, as often as possible, is no longer the necessary or sufficient condition for good mobility. Good mobility is transforming. What counts now is the wealth of opportunities and the encounters we have with other people, experiences procured or favored by our travels. And mobility as such is becoming a way of life at all scales and in all human and social spheres. This change now could call for a new paradigm. And then I come with my next slide, shifting paradigms, reinventing mobility in order to stay mobile. Well, most of the challenges and barriers are explicitly pointing on the need for a better understanding of the interrelations between the desired features of the future mobility system at one hand and future dynamics of society, including its norms, values, and its culture at the other side. And now we can see that new mobility paradigm will offer a way to think about these more complex problems of movement across different future scenarios. That is also an implicit task or challenge of Rebalance. And here I would like to quote John Urry, the father of the mobility turn in sociology, together with Mimi Scheller, who said that a new mobility regime involves reorganizing society over many decades, including its transportation system, population distribution, and the nature of work and sociability. So ultimately, this all could even transform more than just mobility, but the society as a whole, and could create or put in place a sustainable culture by 2050, the time when we claim at the Commission to achieve climate neutrality in Europe. And I would like to end now, conclude with a last slide. I would also like to share some concepts, because we talk about mobility, new culture, and how it looks like. Now, let's also look at how we can reach that. One way, of course, is to address politicians and the political level and the decision makers. But another interesting concept comes from the Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci, who called for culture, who defined the concept of cultural hegemony, which he defined as the domination of a cultural diverse society by the ruling class, which manipulates the culture of that society, so that the imposed ruling class worldview becomes the accepted cultural norm. Now, this means, though, it becomes the universally valid dominant ideology which justifies the social, political, and economic status quo as natural and inevitable, perpetual, and beneficial for every social class, rather than as artificial social constructs that benefit only the ruling class. Now, this idea of the future offers a very good base. Idea of cultural hegemony offers a very good base for action. A successful elaboration of that we saw, for instance, also with neoliberalism in economy, which used exactly this path. Now, I would like to conclude by saying that, quoting John Maynard Keynes, who said that The idea of the future being different from the present is so repugnant to our conventional modes of thought and behavior that we, at least most of us, after a great resistance to acting, offer a great resistance to acting on its practice. And I believe that together with this concept of cultural hegemony, that is exactly what we need to do day by day for many years probably. And it's there also that Rebalance offers a first approach, a first step on a long road towards this sustainable world by 2050. And the colleagues of Rebalance, of course, will explain that later on. But first, I ask Anka that to link with Horizon Europe. Thank you.